Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Film Focus episode 214, the review for Hoppers. Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen of the North, South, East, and West, and welcome to another episode of Film Focus. I'm your host, the Hypersonic55, and I'm glad that you decided to join me once again for some film-related discussion. And as you heard at the start of the episode, we're going to be talking about Hoppers, the latest film from Pixar. Now, before we get into the review, I'm just going to let you know that prior to this film coming out, I didn't have that much enthusiasm for it. Now, that's not to say I didn't think the film was going to be good, it's just that I saw the posters and I'm like, okay. And I don't think I saw a trailer until the last 2 weeks when I was at the cinema. I was like, oh, this is what this film's about. Okay, seems pretty cool. Has a unique premise and I like the look of it. But again, I didn't have that sort of, wow, I need to see that kind of vibe. I think in the intervening years since Sony came out with Into the Spider-Verse, and again, once you got Across the Spider-Verse, which literally just blew the doors off of the animation industry, it's been very hard for me to be excited about anything that is coming from any other studios, with the exception of DreamWorks, because they have been doing some pretty interesting stuff, especially with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Pixar, on the other hand, while they haven't made anything offensively bad or terrible, with the exception of Lightyear, because I still don't know what the hell happened with that movie. Even with films that I enjoyed with Soul, Turning Red, and Inside Out 2, and even Elio, which I know a lot of people didn't care for, but I had a good time, there still felt like there was that spark missing from the studio when it came to their upcoming releases. And with Hoppers, I was like, oh, okay. But having seen the movie now, there was a lot more to enjoy about it than the trailers let on. And I'm going to tell you why in this review. So as per usual, I'll be talking about the story, characters, and presentation. So without further ado, let's jump in. Alright, so the film can be summed up as the following. This story revolves around Mabel, a young lady who has had an affinity for animals and nature since she was a child. At a certain point, this one area in her town, this forest area that she's been quite fond of, has been set to be demolished for a freeway, which is being headed up by the mayor of the town, and she has a very limited window of time to try and save it from being demolished. So, while on her quest, she happens to come across her university where scientists have been dabbling in experiments where they could transfer the minds of humans into synthetic robots, and they just happen to be animals as well. So Mabel has the idea of transferring her mind into a small beaver and then going on to befriend the animals of the forest to try and save it from being destroyed. However, her quest has the unintentional side effect of potentially endangering not only the animals but also the humans of the town as well. And that's a way for me to summarize the film without going into the area of spoilers. So I enjoyed the story for this film quite a bit. It has all sorts of crazy things going on, but it still keeps itself entertaining throughout. There are emotional highs and lows and heartfelt moments that feel earned, and because of the nature of the adventure that Mabel goes on, from being a human to this robot beaver and seeing what's going on with that unique side of the animal kingdom in the forest, and seeing how they have their own environments, rules and stuff like that, there's all sorts of hijinks, dangers and scenarios that happen that are really well crafted, really well thought out, and it's that unique mindset that applies to animation that Pixar can bring out when they're firing on all cylinders. And I feel like this film definitely highlights that sort of ingenuity that I think a lot of people came to love about Pixar when they were, initially starting out and got into their stride during the early to mid to late 2000s. And I think there was some unique twists and turns that I didn't expect. And the film, as it's been said before, it's just weird. There's a lot of just weird things going on in this movie that I just didn't expect, but it's weird in a good way. And the film also touches upon important themes and ideas such as environmental awareness, not giving up in the face of adversity, honoring the connection between friends, family, and community, also being present in nature and just taking the time to appreciate it, and also the symbiotic relationship between humans, animals, and the environment in general. Alright, and now it's time to talk about the characters, and I thought that they were all pretty darn good. All of them left an impression, whether you're talking about the main cast or the smaller cameos. There's a lot of people to cover, but I'll try to be as swift as I can. Firstly, there is Mabel Tanaka, who is played by Piper Curda. She was quite good. She brought a lot of energy to the role, and throughout the film, I found myself definitely siding with Mabel, definitely understanding why she is on her crusade. And she's just a very upbeat, tenacious, and quite funny individual. And I also enjoyed King George, who was played by Bobby Moynihan. You'll have to forgive me if I butchered that guy's name, but yeah, as King George, the main beaver, I thought he was great. Very charismatic, very charming, very just very fun. He has a really good energy, and him and Mabel have this really good back and forth throughout the film. He was just great. And then there is Mayor Jerry Generazzo, who is played by John Hamm. And Hamm was having a good time with this role. He was so good. I really enjoyed the energy that he brought to this character. He was charming, but also a douche, but in that sort of way that you'd come to expect with a person in his position. Jerry and Mabel have an interesting back and forth as well, and seeing the way that his story plays out in the film was also great. Also, Dr. Sam Fairfax, who is played by Kathy Najimy, she was also quite good. And one of the surprises for me in this cast was Dave Franco as Titus. He played this little insect dude who, oh my gosh, one of the most surprising roles in the movie, but he was great. Did an absolutely banging job with his role. And just to mention the other Franco on this list, we have Eduardo Franco as Loaf. He's this slow beaver who has just such a low energy to everything, and it's his lack of charisma or lack of energy when it comes to most scenarios that makes him so hilarious in this film. And the rest of the voice cast were also great. Alright, now we move on to the presentation side of things, and that part of the film was definitely a highlight for sure. The visual presentation for this film is excellent. Pixar films always look good, but I do appreciate the fact that in recent years they've tried to experiment with their art styles and the animation as well. And with this film, I feel like they've struck a good balance between having characters depicted in a way that feels familiar, especially when it comes to the human characters, but also creating styles that aren't as familiar with some of their stuff that's come before. I really like the way that they handled the animals, especially the sort of two perspectives. When the animals are interacting with themselves, they have a more cartoony kind of look, whereas when you see them from a human point of view, they look a lot more cute and act a little bit more realistically. And I feel like there's this nice balance in the art styles where you still have a lot of that detailed realism that you've come to see from Pixar's high quality of detail when it comes to the character models, the environments, the lighting, the shadows, all that like extra detailed texture that you see in like stuff like fur and hair. But you also have these stylized versions of things that you've come to see from these movies, done it in a way that is very vibrant, stands out in a good way. It all moves very nicely, and there was some cool camera angles and interesting perspectives that were used during some of the more action elements of the movie. I guess that's the way for me to phrase it. And I also just like the way that they gave the animals amusing mannerisms and charismatic movements as well. And we can't talk about the presentation without talking about the audio side of things. The film score was handled by Mark Mothersbaugh. I'm pretty sure I butchered his last name, but yeah. I've been aware of this guy scoring films for quite a while, but I think his name mostly stuck in my mind from the time that he worked on Thor Ragnarok. And I could definitely hear shades of that film in this here. This film score was appropriate. It worked for all of the different scenes and scenarios that it was used in, but it definitely had a strange and possibly ethereal kind of sound that worked within the context of the movie as well. And there was also some good uses of licensed music in here that were appropriately used and just felt like a good time. So I was like, okay, all right, I mess with this. All right, so to conclude, I would say Hoppers is definitely a good time and I would recommend. Now, I've seen some reviews online and some people who've seen the film that say that Pixar are back. This is one of their best films in years. And while the film didn't resonate with me on that high of a frequency, I will say that this film has a certain energy, a spark that hasn't been present in a number of their films for quite a while. You could just feel like there was a fire in the internal system that brought this to life. And it just felt like there was a different vibe, a different kind of energy that I could feel throughout. So hopefully this is the start of an upward trajectory for Pixar, and hopefully they'll be able to continue making films that will have us enjoying, have us speaking about them for years to come. I'm just very glad that this film turned out the way in which it did. It just had so much more going for it than I expected. It was fun, it was charming, it had something to say, it was pretty and sounds nice too. So yeah, definitely check it out. So now I turn it over to you, ladies and gentlemen. What did you think of Hoppers if you have seen it? Whatever your thoughts are, be sure to drop them in the comment section below or hit us up on the socials where we exist on X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and yeah, just follow the podcast wherever it can be found. Your subscriptions and comments and ratings would be greatly appreciated on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, all those places. Just give us some love. That'd be great. But yeah, that'll do it for another episode of Film Focus. Thank you for listening as always. And until the next time, this is the Hypersonic 55 signing out. Peace.